everybody, and welcome to the Dennis Prager Show. Great to be with you. Boy, is it great to be with you. This is my first time in the studio in 2 weeks. It has been, shall we say, an adventurous 2 weeks. I had COVID, as you probably know, and thank God I'm fine. I have a lot to say about that. A lot of people wish I were dead. I know that's amazing. Washington Post, yes, the readers of the Washington Post. Great numbers of them wish I had died. Anybody doubts my statement that people on the right are kinder than people on the left? Just need to read comments by Washington Post readers. We're not talking about people reading the Inquirer or something. That will be discussed. I'll tell you what is on my mind aside from COVID. And as I walked through the airports this past weekend, I was in Florida speaking and visiting my son and his family. I was thinking about the idiocy of someone like me having to wear a mask. I think it's idiotic for anybody to have to wear a mask, but it is especially so for someone who has had COVID. I am in the strongest position one can be vis-a-vis the illness. I have natural immunity, and I'm asked to wear a mask. To protect whom from what exactly? Just remember, the pilots are not wearing masks in the cockpit. It's a point that I have made on many occasions. The whole thing is a bluff. Everybody knows that it's an act. It's a Fauci act. It's the scared act, the act of the scared to dominate our policies, which is a very bad thing for any society. But what is on my mind even more than that is the killing of the woman on the set with Alec Baldwin pulling the trigger. I happen to loathe that man. I have utter contempt for him, but I have some pity for him because I can separate my disgust at the type of human being he is with what happened. How is the man given a gun with live ammunition? If that is not pursued to the nth degree, there is something morally wrong with our society. Someone must go to jail. If nobody goes to prison over what happened, then it is a statement by our society that taking a life of an innocent person doesn't mean anything. The only way in which something is stated as being important is by the consequence of the act. I got this from the book that gives me my values, the Bible, and those of you who have read my Bible commentary, at least the one on Exodus, it is also repeated in a very different way in Deuteronomy, which is coming out next year. It was supposed to come out this year, but they couldn't get the paper. A lot of supplies are not being supplied, and the quality paper, I have in my contract with my publisher that it be of a very high quality paper, and it is a beautifully printed book, the Rational Bible. So if you read the Exodus, you will note that I make a very big point of a very strange law, or seemingly strange law, and that is that if an ox gores a person and kills the person, the ox is put to death. Now, nobody blames the ox. Oxen, to use the plural that is used biblically, oxen gore. That's it. That's what they do. Sharks eat, oxen gore. Yes, I remember that. It was a very famous presidential election, the Oxen Gore election. That's what they do. So why is the ox put to death? To make a statement about how serious the taking of a human life is. That is the reason. That is the only reason. We don't let an ox walk around that has killed a human being. Then there is a ceremony in Deuteronomy, one of the strangest ceremonies. For that alone, it is worth getting my commentary on Deuteronomy, because I make sense of things that truly do not strike the modern reader as making sense. But it is an incredibly profound law. I won't review the entirety at all. But if a person is found dead in the street, on a road, outside of a community goes through a very big ritual that involves an animal, a goat, and the ritual is the Bible's way of saying, hey, under your watch, somebody was killed. Somebody has to be regarded as responsible. Now, nobody goes to prison, but there is a very big expiation ceremony. One more example. One of the calls that most made an impact on me in my career. I wonder if that person is listening today. A woman called up and mentioned that their family raised ostriches, and that one of the ostriches had kicked her father to death. They're a very strong animal, ostriches. And so I immediately asked, because of my Bible orientation, I said, so what did you do with the ostrich? And she said, nothing. It wasn't the ostrich's fault. So I said, so when people visit you, you point to an ostrich and say, that's the ostrich that killed my father? She said, yeah. And I was struck by that. And this is a good person. This is no knock on that person. But it is not a person who was familiar with the biblical view of the taking of a life, even if accidental and even if done by an animal. How much more so if done by people? Somebody gave Alec Baldwin live ammunition in a real gun. What the hell is that about? This cannot go unpunished. A 42-year-old woman, mother, wife, is dead, killed by stunning irresponsibility. Stunning. I was listening to Grant Stitchfield, who has a lot of great thoughts, and he wondered if an actor who had been known as very pro-Second Amendment had done this, whether the media would be clamoring for punishment far more than it is. It's an interesting question. I don't know the answer. But I think I obviously repeated it, so I thought the question was interesting. But somebody has to be punished. It's mind-boggling that a gun with real bullets was given to an actor to use. I mean, that's what happened, folks. An actor with anger issues. Well, I won't go that far. Even if he had no issues, he has issues. But even if he had no issues, you don't give that. Now, I don't know his responsibility to make sure that it's blanks in the gun before he shoots it. I don't know what the protocol is. But somebody's responsible, my friends. A human being who deserved to live double her life is dead. People deprived of a mom and a wife and a daughter, maybe a sister. It's terrible. 1-8-PRAGER 776-877-243 776. I'm Dennis Prager.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He is America. Captain America's trying, but nah, not so much. It's Superman. That's why kids have loved him. Adults have loved. When I saw Superman, I was, 8 years old, and I saw Christopher Reeve. You believed a man could fly. And I wanted to be an American, and now I am. But they've killed it. They killed James Bond in the new movie. Sorry, guys, spoilers. I've seen it. It's crap. Don't waste your time. They killed James Bond. Dead. Gone. Because I guess what? He was too sexy? Too toxic in his masculinity? Gone!
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Come to Christ when the Spirit of God comes.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Billy Graham.
Gloria a Dios, hermanos. ¿Quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. We are doing fundraising for the Alliance Defending Freedom.
They are the organization that provides free legal aid to people whose freedoms are being circumscribed by the left. The left has always circumscribed freedom. There is no example in history of the left taking over any institution or any country and liberty being preserved. I don't know why that is not dispositive in having you form your attitude toward the left. There is no example in history of the left not suppressing freedom. Liberals do not suppress freedom, and conservatives do not, but the left does. And liberals keep voting for them. Shame, shame on liberals, but they're not the same as leftists. ADF is this great organization. It's the final 5 days. Go to DennisPrager.com, click on the Alliance Defending Freedom banner. Consider a $100 donation to the Freedom Fund, or you can phone your gift in any amount to 855-649-2020, 855-649-2020. I'm Dennis Prager, and reminding you, Alliance Defending Freedom. It's a beautiful thing to donate to good causes. Okay, a minority of people do, and that's not right. ADF banner at DennisPrager.com. A lot of people have something to say about the killing it took place at the Alec Baldwin set. And my position is somebody must go to prison. If not, it is a statement that you can take life and get away with it. The issue, whether it is an accident, has nothing to do with the fact that it was incredibly and totally irresponsible on someone or some people's watch. That's it. Michael, Los Angeles, hello.
Hi, Dennis.
Hi.
Yeah, this was a terrible event, and it was if the reports are correct, and I have to say, I have to have that caveat because we don't exactly know what happened, but it was tremendous negligence on the part of the armorer and the first AD. There's a protocol that should be followed, and this clearly wasn't followed. Whenever a gun is on set and going to be used, whether it's in a rehearsal or in the actual scene, there's a protocol that needs to be followed. The prop master or the armorer, who's ever handling the gun, comes in with an unloaded gun, says, hey, this is an unloaded gun, shows the barrel of the gun, shines a light down the barrel of the gun to show that there's no debris in the barrel. And anyone on set is allowed to look down that thing, and then he shows what the bullets are. He shows that they're blanks or dummy bullets, and then they go on with the scene. And this clearly didn't happen. As I said, we don't know all the facts, but protocol wasn't followed. And
was there any part of the protocol that the actor who shoots is responsible for?
The actor should have been told what to do by the armorer and the first AD.
No,
but
so in other words, no. So that means that and I'm not looking for him being responsible. I just want to know, does he bear any responsibility according to protocol?
He bears some responsibility, but very little, in my estimation.
Right. No,
he should be told.
Go on.
He should be told by the experts, quote unquote experts, that the gun is either hot or cold, or has bullets in it, or has dummy rounds. He should
All right.
have
So
been
let me just ask you, since this is your area of professional expertise, why would real bullets ever be used on a set?
There should never, ever, ever be real bullets on a set, ever.
Okay.
This is a colossal act of negligence and incompetence.
Okay, that's what I mean. Look, I have no expertise in this arena. I do, however, have a rare gift. It's called common sense. Common sense suggests that why would there ever be, unless we're talking some target practice, out in the wilderness, why would there ever be real bullets, let alone real bullets used that are where the gun is aimed at a human being? This is very bad what happened. Very, 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 very bad. And it should be regarded as such. You can't go on and just say, oh, it was a boo-boo. My fourth example from the Bible. Man is using a hatchet, and the head detaches from the handle. That's exactly how it's written, by the way. And it flies away and kills somebody. The person who did that was completely an accident. And yet the person handling the hatchet is sent to a city, what is called a city of refuge. Cannot stay in the company of the rest of the world. The person is not executed, but they are sent to a city of refuge. Calls to ban guns on film sets grow after fatal shooting of cinematographer Hutchins. Well, I don't know what about banning guns. What does that mean, banning guns? How are you going to have gunfights in movies if you ban guns? It might be to be overkill. All I can say is somebody has to be punished. That is the point that I keep making here. All righty, Mike in El Segundo, California. Hello.
Hi, Dennis. Alec Baldwin is very much at fault, and here's why. Had he taken a National Rifle Association firearm safety course, as I did, age 15, he would know, he would have been taught, and he would remember, as I do, more than 45 years later, that when you pick up a firearm or someone hands it to you, it is your duty to inspect it. Usually you have the other person open the action, show you, or you can do it yourself. You inspect it to determine, number one, whether or not it's loaded, and number two, whether or not the ammunition it's loaded with is compatible for that firearm and is compatible for the purpose that you intend to use that firearm for. Had Alec Baldwin followed that basic safety rule, this tragedy would have never, ever happened.
Well, that's clear. The question that I posed earlier, which I don't know the answer to, is that the normal protocol of an actor? And I can understand an actor is given a gun, said, hey, we got blanks in here, have a great day. He assumes he was given a gun with blanks. But you're right, NRA protocol was not followed.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Southwest was devastated this week, straight up lying, talking about it was the weather. The reason why 2,000 flights were canceled over the weekend, Friday through Sunday, and then over 300 or nearly 400 more on Monday. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of these people just called out sick. They just called out sick. They've been threatened by their employer because their employer happens to be a federal contractor, and because of that, because the federal government has their hands in Southwest Airlines, they have to comply. Now, here's the news. Nothing has happened as of yet, so technically, Southwest Airlines does not have to comply right now. They can wait for OSHA to make whatever edict they're going to lay out that has not been done thus far, but nonetheless, they suspect that it is coming down the pike. You get all these pilots, 10,000 pilots, 60 to 70% of these pilots are men and women that fought for our freedom, and we're going to kick them off the freaking job. Can you imagine the disruption? You talk about, we look at the ports in California. Can you imagine the supply chain disruption if now we can't even unload cargo ships and we're going to have fewer and fewer pilots? Fewer trained pilots? I don't want to fly. I don't know if they're going to be like United Airlines and bring social justice warrior pilots on. I don't even want to fly. Listen, if you're a pilot, I don't care if you're pink, red, white. I want the best doggone pilot when I'm sitting up in that can 30,000 feet above the ground.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Why don't we talk about Southwest Airlines, which has been in the news very recently.
Basically, Southwest had to cancel over 1,000 flights, and they claimed initially that it was for the weather. And a lot of them were actually out of Florida. And ironically, I was actually out speaking at a conference in Miami, and it was beautiful weather when I flew out on Sunday. So this was, of course, not weather related. They're trying to claim that it wasn't for pushing back against the vaccine mandates. But what a lot of people are speculating, and what I think there is some merit to, is that there is a group now of pilots who are saying we are refusing to be coerced by our employer to take the vaccine. And in fact, the Union of Southwest Pilots has filed a lawsuit in the Federal District of Texas. What's interesting, Eric, is that traditionally conservatives have been kind of anti-union for a lot of really good reasons.
Oh, yeah.
And to say that, we are coerced into having to give union dues, and then they, of course, funnel those dues to Democrat candidates or things like that. But this shows the power of collective bargaining. This group of pilots is now pushing back and saying we will not be coerced by our employer into unilaterally modifying our employment conditions to take a vaccine that could, by the way, have a lot of negative influence. I mean, there was a friend of mine who was even saying the other day that a friend of his, who is a pilot for a different carrier, has some anecdotal evidence to say that there have been some pilots who have had blood clots or, the myocarditis, other things at altitude. And so there are a lot of pilots that are very concerned about that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Hi, everybody. If nobody goes to prison over the death of this woman on the Alec Baldwin set, it is a statement that our society doesn't give a damn about people being killed. That is my view. It would truly infuriate me. Everything about it was bad. Really, really bad. We need to know who and why. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Mary, hello.
Hi. I just had some facts about what happened that day that add to the negligence, and then also why it might not get prosecuted, or someone might not get prosecuted. Thursday morning, it happened Thursday day. Thursday morning at 6 a.m., the crew showed up for their call. 12 crew members walked off the set, and they shut down the whole thing for 6 hours. And in fact, Helena Hutchins said, "I feel like part of my family is leaving me," and she, the previous Saturday, the Saturday before Thursday, there was misfires of guns, there was bad safety procedures, and that's why the crew walked off the set. There was already misfires happening on the set. It was a rushed schedule. It was a low-budget film. New Mexico is a high tax incentive for film. Michelle Lujan Grisham, a huge liberal. She's as liberal as any governor in this country, or worse. We are a tiny state being shut down. We're as bad as California, as bad as New York. She loves film in the state. It doesn't, we lose money, but it brings in a lot of other positive things, which I am for film in the state. But she will probably use her power that someone does not get prosecuted. I feel it's a very strong possibility. Also, we are a big blue state. The sheriff in Santa Fe County may be a liberal. He may, turn a blind eye to this. I don't know. But as far as Alec Baldwin, supposedly there was no armor on the set. So the people that replaced those 12 crew members that walked off the set were non-union. So the union crew left the set in protest. They brought in non-union people within
your whole call's fascinating, just fascinating. If there were clear, and there will be clear, there's no way it won't be, clear responsibility for the negligence, and the governor of the state says not to prosecute, and I'm not sure that the governor has that power. They may have a power to excuse somebody found guilty, but I don't know if they have the power to order no prosecution. But let's say the governor does exercise it, it would truly be a moral scandal. This story is a test of a society's value system. That's the reason that I am speaking about it. Look, I could take any of the murders in the inner city that take place every weekend in Chicago and spend an hour on that. I fully acknowledge that, and I do spend time on that. But this is as clear as it gets that somebody engaged in spectacular negligence caused a young woman to die. And that should infuriate people. Simple as that. And I gave you 4 biblical examples. 4. From where I get my fury and desire to see somebody punished for this. That's where I get my values, my friends. It's a story out that fewer and fewer young people get their values from the Bible. And you can see the results on any campus. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384. Just want you to know that if Sean had pain, Sean leads a pain-free life. But if Sean had pain, he would be taking Relief Factor. He's one of the only people in my life who is pain-free. A lucky man. But in all seriousness, everybody I know takes it. It's a phenomenal supplement. And they have a great offer. If it doesn't work in 3 weeks, it probably won't work for you. So for 3 weeks, you have a special price, $19.95 plus shipping. And that's at ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border. Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America.
You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
So allow me to read to you a little about this horrible, horrible, horrible incident where someone must go to prison, or it is a statement of a society having placing little value on human life. Rust production members, this is American news from PM. Rust Production, that was the production company. Rust production members say Baldwin movie set's head armorer was, quote, inexperienced and green. Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the head armorer, who, by the way, I think is 24 years old. Is that right? Yeah, 24 years. You have a 24-year-old as the head armorer on a movie? All right, maybe it's normal. Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the head armorer who was hired on Alec Baldwin's film Rust. Oh, Rust is not the company. Rust is the name of the film. Has raised alarms with both past and present production members leading up to Thursday's fatal shooting on the set. Hannah Gutierrez Reed, the head armorer, was hired, has raised alarms. Okay, I read that to you. She was hit. She was a bit careless with the guns, waving it around every now and again. A source who worked alongside the 24-year-old armorer, the upcoming Nicolas Cage film The Old Way, told the Daily Beast. There were a couple times, should be a couple of times, but that's a lost battle, when she was loading the blanks and doing it in a fashion that we thought was unsafe. Baldwin discharged a gun on the set Thursday, fatally wounding 42-year-old cinematographer Helena Hutchins and injuring 48-year-old director Joel Souza after Gutierrez Reed handed Baldwin a gun that was believed to be safe. Sources told the Daily Beast that the fatal incident was the result of failings all around. Gutierrez Reed was described as being inexperienced and green by a Rust production source who told the Daily Beast there were at least 2 previous incidents of guns being accidentally discharged by other crew members before Thursday's tragic incident, wrote the Daily Beast. Sets are advised to test fire guns off stage before use, according to the Actors Equity Association's guidelines. All loading of firearms must be done by the property master, armorer, or experienced persons working under their direct supervision. It also states for actors and staff to treat all guns as if they are loaded and deadly, a point that many Hollywood weapon experts have blasted Baldwin for. Well, that's a proper blast if that's in fact what's expected of an actor. 2 production sources on the set of Rust told the Daily Beast that assistant director Dave Halls, the one who personally handed the gun to Baldwin before the incident, should have also checked the safety of the firearm. He's supposed to be our last line of defense, and he failed us, the first source said. He's the last person that's supposed to look at that firearm. According to an affidavit, Gutierrez Reed placed 3 prop guns on a cart outside before the scene was filmed. Halls then grabbed the revolver from the cart, calling out, "Cold gun," as he handed it over. The second production source told the Daily Beast that the first assistant director should be personally verifying whether a weapon is hot or cold. This check alone should have prevented this incident, the person said, wrote the Daily Beast. Okay, sounds right to me. Bad stuff. I wouldn't be reporting on this if I didn't believe that it symbolized or exemplified a question for society: how do we regard homicide? It's a big question for a society to answer. So this will be a test. We'll see what happens. John in Villanova, Pennsylvania. Hello, John of Villanova.
Things are great here. By the way, I love the people who stand in for you, but they're not you, so welcome back.
That's very sweet. They're terrific, but nobody is anybody. We're all only us, so thank you.
I know. Okay. Building on the call that you got from the gal in New Mexico, there was another piece that was reported about the story, not only that the union crew walked off, but that the gun was apparently checked before lunch. Everyone left the area, and it was left unattended. And so I'm reluctant to suggest any kind of conspiracy, any sort of pushback by the union members against the non-union crew that was brought in. But I made the possible elision in my own mind, and I want to repeat, it was reported nowhere that those dots are connected, but it did seem strange.
Wow. Look, the question of how real bullets were put in a gun on a set is a very legitimate question. By the way, you're one of the only callers to ever use the word elision.
Oh, okay.
I do want to commend you.
I'm trying to think of some innocent reason for.
You're right. It does not make sense that there would be an innocent reason. Now that you mention it.
Yeah, so that's why I went to the possibility of a blowback by the union members, who I think felt really disrespected by how poorly things were handled there.
Wow. Well, then this really needs to be investigated. Well, did I say that John of Villanova was special? Huh? Do I know my Villanova Johns? Didn't come out right. My Villanova Johns. Good call. Back in a moment.
Judge Thomas, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America.
You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He is America. Captain America's trying, but nah, not so much. It's Superman. That's why kids have loved him. Adults have loved. When I saw Superman, I was, 8 years old, and I saw Christopher Reeve. You believed a man could fly. And I wanted to be an American, and now I am. But they've killed it. They killed James Bond in the new movie. Sorry, guys, spoilers. I've seen it. It's crap. Don't waste your time. They killed James Bond. Dead. Gone. Because I guess what? He was too sexy? Too toxic in his masculinity? Gone!
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
I'll beat a little bit. Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Yes, my friends. I wrote my column. My column is due late afternoon Mondays. I wrote my column on the plane last night from Florida. And now I'm thinking I'm going to write a brand new column. It wouldn't be the first time. And I guess the other one I can defer a week. It is rare, yes, and it's a pain. It's effortful to write a column, but I do feel very strongly about this issue. A society is tested. We're all tested It's a very good way to go through life, to think that you're being tested. This was drummed into me at a very young age, high school. My close friend from that time, still my close friend, Joseph Telushkin, used to get a big kick out of it. Dennis is always testing himself. Society tests itself. And if it doesn't regard these things as tests, that the failure is already profound. Something really bad happened on that set. The last call made me think that it's worse than negligence. Somebody put in a live bullet for a reason. Doesn't sound like a mistake. Gee, we got boxes of blanks and boxes of real bullets, and by accident, somebody took one out. Maybe that happened. So to John, Theo, Diane, Pamela, Jim, Jeff, Bob, and John, you all have important things to say, and I don't have the time to hear all of what you have to say. Yes, indeed. It's disturbing. The most disturbing will be if nothing happens. That's the issue that the society has to confront. I started out the hour with 4 examples, maybe 5, 4 examples from the Bible, from the first 5 books where all the laws are, regarding accidental homicide and how seriously it is taken. It's sort of another, or it might end up being another example of a biblical and secular difference in attitudes towards moral concerns. We continue. Don't forget to go to my website and click on the ADF banner.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Bank transactions. The Democrats want the IRS to snoop around and check out what you're doing if you have a bank account with more than $600 in it. They want to get involved in your PayPal transactions. You're sending money to your kids. The IRS wants to know all about that. They think they can drag more money out of us. Like the IRS. And the Democrats' scheme is we got to figure a way to pay for all this crap. All this spending the Democrats want. Okay, here's the way we can do it. Let's go audit a bunch of people and let's go check out grandma sending $601 to their grandkid via PayPal. And when a reporter pointed out to Pelosi that Americans are livid about this, and is it going to stay in your reconciliation bill? Pelosi had a very predictable answer.
Yes, there are concerns that some people have, but if people are breaking the law and not paying their taxes, one way to track them is through the banking measure. I think 600, but that's a negotiation that will go on as to what the amount is. But yes.
Yes. You think a multi-millionaire like Nancy Pelosi cares about a hardworking person being tracked by the IRS? If you have a transaction over $600, yes, some people are calling the bank. You better call your bank. You got a relationship with a local banker? You better call him or her, and you better demand there be a pushback.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He is America. Captain America's trying, but nah, not so much. It's Superman. That's why kids have loved him. Adults have loved. When I saw Superman, I was 8 years old, and I saw Christopher Reeve. You believed a man could fly. And I wanted to be an American, and now I am. But they've killed it. They killed James Bond in the new movie. Sorry, guys, spoilers. I've seen it. It's crap. Don't waste your time. They killed James Bond. Dead. Gone. Because I guess what? He was too sexy? Too toxic in his masculinity? Gone!
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Secretary Chow, I'm glad you're available today because there are two headlines. One from the Wall Street Journal. Biggest U.S. retailers charter private cargo ships to sail around port delays. Then in the New York Times, it's not sustainable. What America's port crisis looks like up close. There aren't enough workers. There aren't enough ships. You've been the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Transportation. What do we do?
This is a very dire situation. You know, when COVID initially hit our shores early in 2020, I was then Secretary of Transportation, and we quickly focused on keeping the transportation supply chains open so that essential medical supplies, groceries, and other essentials were available. And that effort actually required some pretty strong measures. Number one, we decided to ease some restrictions on truckers so that they can keep goods moving. We made sure that the national airspace kept airplanes flying because even though at one point planes were nearly empty of passengers, commercial airliners also routinely transport a lot of goods, especially medical supplies. You know, remember those early days of the initial lockdowns? We had hoarding of toilet paper, sandy wipes, shortage of masks. Stores were putting limits on how much customers can buy of one item, and more than 70% of domestic freight moves via trucks. But today's supply chain problems extend all the way, where worker shortages and COVID lockdowns have slowed the loading of cargo ships from where they started to U.S. ports, where, as you've just mentioned, the other day there were over 60 freighters with tens of thousands of storage containers offshore waiting for an opportunity to unload.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Dennis Prager Show. Great to be back in studio. 2 weeks from I've been broadcasting most of the time, but physically I have not been present here because I had COVID. I am fine, thanks to prophylactics, thanks to therapeutics. I'll have more to say about that later. The readers of the Washington Post wish I were dead. So they wrote, but I am very alive and well. My guest is the sort of inimitable Mollie Hemingway. She is a founder of and an editor at the American Federalist, at the Federalist, senior editor of the Online. It's a terrific place. She is on Fox News regularly, etc., etc. And her book is now out, Rigged: How the Media, Big Tech, and the Democrats Seized Our Elections. I'm a little annoyed by this book because it means I have to read it, because Mollie Hemingway wrote it. So, as soon as I finish my 900-page history of the Vietnam War, which I am drawing to a close, you are the next book, Mollie.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I appreciate your reading, and I actually enjoyed writing it and researching it. So I hope you enjoy it.
So a lot of questions come to mind. By the way, when was it published? Today, last week? When is the official date?
It was October 12th, I think.
October 12th. Excellent. I wish it well. You do a tremendous amount of research. I looked at the footnotes, by the way, folks, or the end notes at the end of the book. It's an astonishing amount of research that she put in. By the way, where do you live?
I live in Virginia.
Loudoun County?
No, and my children do not go to government schools, thank God.
Thank God is right, but I would add, thank their mom, and if there's a dad, thank the parents too. You made a great decision. So what do you do? Homeschool them?
No, one goes to a Lutheran school and another goes to a Catholic school because she graduated from the Lutheran school. But they're classically educated, and my husband and I did in fact sacrifice a lot. Like before we bought our first home, they were both in private school. Because we cared so much about the quality of education that they would receive, and we knew they would not get it at our local government schools. And also it's not even about the quality of education, it's about the morals, and we knew that the morals held by the government workers did not match our morals, and it seemed ludicrous that we would send them off for 8 hours a day and then have to deprogram them every day from what they were doing.
It is astonishing to me how many parents who share our values do send their children for 8 hours a day to be programmed with moral poison.
Yeah, it honestly makes no sense to me, and I understand the convenience of it, and I understand the cost, but we are so pleased with the sacrifices we made, and it has worked out so well. We love our children's schools.
By the way, it is an irony of history. I got a big kick out of it theologically, that one child went to a Lutheran school and one went to a Catholic school. You couldn't have done that 400 years ago. The rivalry between the Lutherans and the Catholics would not have allowed that to happen inside of one family. So I got a kick out of that. Anyway, you did a great thing. All right, on to your book here. So my first question to you is, in all of your research, did anything surprise you? Have we lost Mollie here? I think we have.
I'm so sorry. I knew before writing the book that I really wanted to look into big tech censorship and how corporate media had become propagandists. But what definitely surprised me the most was learning about how coordinated the operation to change our election laws was. And I had been someone who covered the 2016 election hoax extensively. And that was the one where Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party created this conspiracy theory that Donald Trump stole the 2016 election by colluding with Russia. And the guy who funded that, or who actually hired the people who created that conspiracy theory, was a DNC lawyer, or a Democrat lawyer named Mark Elias. He's the same exact guy who ran the operation to change all the voting laws in all the states, to create the chaos, the flooding the zone with tens of millions of mail-in ballots, and to decrease scrutiny for them. But that wasn't actually even the most surprising part. For me, it was the Mark Zuckerberg funding of $419 million to engage in a private takeover of government election offices. And those two things kind of go hand in hand, the changing the laws to flood the zone with mail-in ballots, and then to fund the private takeover of election offices in Democrat counties and swing states. Those were part of the same plan.
All right, explain that last one to me. What did Mark Zuckerberg exactly do?
Yeah, so, billionaires spend money on campaigns all the time, but that's not what this was. This was him spending $419 million predominantly in Democrat counties and swing states to embed left-wing activists into government offices, which are supposed to be nonpartisan, as they did things like register voters, design ballots, create processes for mail-in balloting, count ballots, run the whole show. I actually write in there about how in one case in Wisconsin, these left-wing funded people literally kicked out the government officers who were supposed to be in charge of the election by just taking over the entire operation. And obviously it should be illegal for tech oligarchs to run our elections, but it was such an audacious plan that many governments weren't prepared to even know it was happening, much less that it had happened.
Wow. So what does it mean exactly that he spent $419 million? Who did he give the money to?
So it was funded. The money went to counties nationwide, but the money predominantly went to blue counties in swing states. And people suspected that this was very much helping Democrats, if they knew about it as it was happening. But now there's all sorts of research and data showing how partisan the results were. So one of the states that he funded was Texas, some Democrat counties in Texas. And a team of economists figured out, using Bayesian analysis, that this yielded 200,000 additional votes for Joe Biden in Texas. And you think, well, that doesn't really matter. Texas is a strongly Republican state. But you have to remember that Ted Cruz won his election in 2018 by only just over 200,000 votes. And most of the funding was going to see if these states ring any bells: Georgia, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona. And each of those states had fairly narrow margins, yielding victory for Democrats. And there's no question that this targeting of massive blue counties with these get-out-the-vote operations, which just happened to coincide precisely with Democrats' actual campaign strategy, yielded the difference for these states. And,
okay, so I want to truly understand this. These extra votes are legitimate extra votes or phony extra votes?
So they are, near as I can tell. I mean, one of the issues is that the change to mail-in balloting laws and the widespread expansion of balloting laws makes it almost impossible to detect, much less conclusively find, fraud. So the fact that there is a degradation in the security of our system through the changes to the laws is an important issue. But let's leave that aside and just assume, for the sake of argument, that every single one of these votes that has very little scrutiny applied to it is legitimate. This is about the additional ringing out of votes in blue counties relative to red counties in the election. And the reason why that's important is because it's like in a sporting, like a Super Bowl. If one team is hiring the officials, paying the officials, training the officials, responsible for the officials, then you might have some questions about close calls. And because of mail-in balloting, so much of everything was about close calls. Does this signature match? Did they date their envelope? Are they supposed to be registered in that county? And so having the people embed into our nonpartisan system, but they're actually left-wing activists. I mean, the groups that were brought in, there were strings attached to all these funds. And the counties that took the funds had to bring in people from a list of left-wing groups.
Okay, hold on there. The book is Rigged: How the Media, Big Tech, and Democrats Seized Our Elections. Mollie Hemingway. It's up at DennisPrager.com.
The people who knock these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
Biggest and most costly manhunt in U.S. history.
United States killed Osama bin Laden.
There are reports surfacing that Al-Qaeda has placed a $50,000 US bounty on the heads of any U.S. Navy SEALs.
Nobody's going to survive that. There's nobody in that.
This is the single largest loss of life in Afghanistan in a single incident.
Most of them are U.S. Navy SEALs.
We discovered bullets in the bodies of the Navy SEAls. The military threw them away.
More likely than not, that supports a shootout on board.
Anybody out there, we have a fallen angel.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
I think this family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor.
Our lunch consisted of whatever my mother could scrape together from the dinner the night before. We would have sandwiches with no meat.
My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO. Put in an economic growth plan called 999.
999! We'll all be able to say, free at last! Free at last!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
He is America. Captain America's trying, but nah, not so much. It's Superman. That's why kids have loved him. Adults have loved. When I saw Superman, I was, 8 years old, and I saw Christopher Reeve. You believed a man could fly. And I wanted to be an American, and now I am. But they've killed it. They killed James Bond in the new movie. Sorry guys, spoilers. I've seen it. It's crap. Don't waste your time. They killed James Bond. Dead. Gone. Because I guess what? He was too sexy? Too toxic in his masculinity? Gone!
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America.
You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
I'd like to remind you about Job Creators Network. If I have 5 favorite organizations in the country, it is easily one of them. These are the people who fight for small businesses. Small business is under attack because small business cannot be manipulated like big business can. Big business in this country is a moral wasteland. Small businesses are our hope. The people protecting them is the Job Creators Network. So they're building an army of small business advocates across this country. If you find out how to join JCN's growing army of small business owners or supporters of small business, you don't have to own one to join. Go to jobcreatorsnetwork.com. This is not, they're not asking for a donation, they're asking for you. jobcreatorsnetwork.com. I am speaking to Mollie Hemingway, the editor at The Federalist, major writer in this country. The book is just out, Rigged: How the Media, Big Tech, and the Democrats Seized Our Elections. The book is up at my website now. So I really, really want to get to the bottom of this for my own clarity. So vast amounts of money were spent on hiring people in swing districts in red states, predominantly, to make sure that they were the people who did the vote counting. That's one issue that you raised. The other is the vast amount of ballots that were sent out to people, which enabled anything to happen as a result. Is that a fair summary thus far?
Except that the funding went to blue counties in swing states, not swing counties in red states. And so they really targeted the funding in a very smart fashion if you're a Democrat. You know, Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, or Atlanta in Georgia, or Milwaukee and other cities in Wisconsin.
Well, let me understand something. Did Republicans in any of these cities not see what was happening?
So the funding was offered supposedly to help with personal protective equipment for COVID relief. And so you had people applying for the funding if they were in Republican counties or Democrat counties. But the way the funding worked is that if you were in Philadelphia, this is no exaggeration, Philadelphia literally got $10 million in Zuckerberg funding, whereas Republican counties in Pennsylvania got $5,000. And there were very few Republicans in Philadelphia, but I actually talked with one who did know what was going on. And the money was used to set up voting centers in Philadelphia. Even though you're not supposed to vote, they don't have early voting in Pennsylvania, but they used the money to set this up, and she raised the alarm, she filed lawsuits, it kind of went back and forth in the courts, and then Election Day hit after who knows how many tens of thousands of people had voted this way. Without oversight, by the way. They were told that it wasn't a voting center, even though people could go in, get a mail-in ballot, cast the ballot, drop off the ballot, and leave. They were told somehow that didn't meet the technical definition of voting, so that Republicans couldn't oversee it. But the money that was used to set up these places was this Zuckerberg funding.
If there had been, let me get to a bottom line question. If there had been, as was envisioned nearly all of my life, this bizarre notion that voting would actually take place on Election Day, and it, with the exceptions of people asking for an absentee ballot, everybody voted in person. Do you think there would have been a different result?
I don't even think it's a close question, and for many different reasons. I mean, it's much more difficult to have a lack of security with a ballot on Election Day because you have to show ID or state who you are in person, whereas what happened with mail-in ballots is they just sent out tens of millions of ballots to anyone who was on a list, even if the person no longer lived at that address. That happened in every state where they did this, and 10% of the population moves each year. So it's not like it's an intentional crime or anything like that. You know, it's fine to move, but when you're just flooding the zone with so many ballots and you're removing any security provisions related to them, it just is very easy to manipulate and very hard to detect when it happens. It takes a lot of money and time and energy to be able to figure out exactly what's going on. So I don't even think it's a close call.
I think that any honest American, and there are some honest Democrats, I think that anyone would say what has been done opened the gates of chicanery. I mean, it's undeniable. Why else would there be the obliteration of Election Day? How many weeks in advance in, let's say, Philadelphia were ballots sent out?
It was, I don't remember exactly when, but it was, I mean, they were doing early voting for the entire month before.
Entire month. So we've gone from Election Day to Election Month.
Oh, it's actually 2 months in North Carolina that you can early vote. So there's this wide expanse into election season. I interviewed Attorney General Barr for the book, and one of the things he said that struck me was that we really should move back more toward a one-day voting operation with exceptions, because it's like having a jury that can decide that any juror on a jury trial can decide at any point who they're voting
right
for.
Before the trial ends.
Having it come to completion, yeah.
That's a great analogy. I love it. Yes. Why would people object? It's the same exact thing. We're the jurors. We voters are jurors. Why are we allowed to vote on the trial before it ends?
But it's partly Democratic Party strategy to create some chaos and confusion associated with Election Day, to expand the sphere of litigation, to increase the amount of time in which ballots can be received and counted. That is actually considered a feature, not a bug for them. It's very bad, I think, for the American people who don't appreciate this level of confusion and chaos, but it will continue until people straighten out the voting laws.
So what is the state, in my state, California, isn't it now permanent, or at least until it's undone, that ballots will be sent out in the millions?
And California has been a testing ground for all sorts of shenanigans, I guess we could say, from ballot harvesting to universal mail-in balloting. And partly the issue, though, I think Republicans I spoke to, they do wish things were more secure, but they also just want to know what the rules are so that they can follow them the same way.
All right. Hold it there. Rigged is the book. Mollie Hemingway, the author.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Secretary Chow, I'm glad you were available today because there are two headlines. One from the Wall Street Journal. Biggest U.S. retailers charter private cargo ships to sail around port delays. Then in the New York Times, it's not sustainable. What America's port crisis looks like up close. There aren't enough workers. There aren't enough ships. You've been the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Transportation. What do we do?
It's a very dire situation. You know, when COVID initially hit our shores early in 2020, I was in Secretary of Transportation, and we quickly focused on keeping the transportation supply chains open so that essential medical supplies, groceries, and other essentials were available. And that effort actually required some pretty strong measures. Number one, we decided to ease some restrictions on truckers so that they can keep goods moving. We made sure that the national airspace kept airplanes flying because even though at one point planes were nearly empty of passengers, commercial airliners also routinely transport a lot of goods, especially medical supplies. You know, remember those early days of the initial lockdowns? We had hoarding of toilet paper, sandy wipes, shortage of masks. Stores were putting limits on how much customers can buy of one item, and more than 70% of domestic freight moves via trucks. But today's supply chain problems extend all the way, where worker shortages and COVID lockdowns have slowed the loading of cargo ships from where they started to U.S. ports, where, as you've just mentioned, the other day there were over 60 freighters with tens of thousands of storage containers offshore waiting for an opportunity to unload.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America. You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Hello, my friends. Dennis Prager with you. Mollie Hemingway is my guest. Book just came out, Rigged: How the Media, Big Tech, and the Democrats Seized Our Elections. Again, the bottom line is, if tens of millions of ballots had not been sent out often a month in advance, now I'm learning even 2 months in advance in North Carolina, the odds are that the election results would have been different. Now, let's analyze that for a moment. What is the reason? Was it because people who would not have voted ended up voting, or because there was actual cheating? Oh, let me put you on here. Sorry about that, Mollie. Actually, she isn't there. Well, we will presumably get her back. So that's the question that I would like answered here. What is the reason? Then I want to ask about the courts. See, when people say that there was cheating in the 2020 election, it is dismissed as just conspiratorial thinking. But there is a middle road, and that is that so much was done that is unprecedented that it resulted in a lot of things that would not have happened in a normal election year that did occur in this election year. And I have gone through the list of anomalies about this last election. The counties that are almost always determinative of presidential elections and which went for Donald Trump and he still lost. I mean, that's one of many anomalies. You can find the list on the internet, just anomalies of 2020 election. And that's those are some of the issues. We'll have her again if we can't get her right now. We'll just have her again on it, and it's no big deal. What's the story with Mollie? Anybody know? Looks like she's trying to get her. All right, let's see here. I think we'll just have to postpone. Yeah, okay, that's fine. Darren in Grand Ridge, Michigan. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. All right, we do have her. Hi, Mollie. Did you think I was saying goodbye to you?
I had a miscommunication on.
Say it again? You had a miscommunication. Okay, so c'est la vie. So I'm asking the question. When people say that there was cheating in the election, would you subscribe to that statement, or would you subscribe to it with clarification? Oh boy, we're not having much luck here. All right, we're gonna have to figure out another time to do this. It happens, my friends, and it is part of the life of a talk show host. Let's see again. Grand Ridge, Michigan, and Darren. Hello.
Hey, glad all is well with you.
Yes, it is.
A couple real quick things. I know you're going to talk about the COVID and the therapeutics, prophylactics, and all that. Two quick things. I had my annual physical a couple days ago, and my doctor was all about vax and poo-pooed the hydrox and zinc and ivermectin, vitamin D. So I know I can go to your website and find a doctor that will prescribe those. But the other thing, rolling into what you're going to talk about, on Facebook, a friend of mine sent me, this is from the Virology Journal, August 22nd of 2005, about chloroquine is a potent inhibitor of SARS coronavirus. So
right, it is. That's exactly right. We'll be back in a moment. In fact, we'll be back right now. We won't be back in a moment. How do you like that? Because it's time for me to tell you about a product that I actually asked to advertise on my show because it worked for me. Many of you have tingling and numbness in extremities, specifically hands and or feet. I am one of those for much of my life in feet. I finally figured out actually a way to deal with it, and that is special inserts in my shoes. And they did work for years. Then I read about Nerve Renew, tried it out, and guess what? After about 8 months to a year, I threw away the inserts. Haven't worn them since. You can try it for 2 weeks for free, and you can have a 1-year money-back guarantee at trynerverenew.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Bank transactions. The Democrats want the IRS to snoop around and check out what you're doing if you have a bank account with more than $600 in it. They want to get involved in your PayPal transactions. You're sending money to your kids. The IRS wants to know all about that. They think they can drag more money out of us. Like the IRS and the Democrats' scheme is we got to figure a way to pay for all this crap. All this spending the Democrats want. Okay, here's the way we can do it. Let's go audit a bunch of people and let's go check out grandma sending $601 to their grandkid via PayPal. And when a reporter pointed out to Pelosi that Americans are livid about this, and is it going to stay in your reconciliation bill? Pelosi had a very predictable answer.
Yes, there are concerns that some people have, but if people are breaking the law and not paying their taxes, one way to track them is through the banking measure. I think 600, but that's a negotiation that will go on as to what the amount is. But yes.
Yes. You think a multi-millionaire like Nancy Pelosi cares about a hardworking person being tracked by the IRS? If you have a transaction over $600, yes, some people are calling the bank. You better call your bank. You got a relationship with a local banker? You better call him or her, and you better demand there be a pushback.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America. You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
All right, everybody, we're going to give it another try here. Mollie Hemingway, is it all good now?
I think I'm here.
I think you're there, too.
Okay.
Which is even more important. Mollie Hemingway's important book is Rigged: How the Media, Big Tech, and the Democrats Seized Our Elections. So the question, I think the bottom line question is, there's no doubt in my mind that tens of millions of ballots were sent to people about a month in advance in order to play havoc with the election, in order to get as many ballots in for Democrats as possible. Nobody who is honest can deny that. However, that does not mean that ballots were deliberately miscounted at election centers. Is it fair to make that distinction?
It is, but I think it also is worth noting that there was an effort to keep people from observing the counting of ballots. And this is something that in my reporting I saw in multiple different states, and I looked into it a bit in Philadelphia and Atlanta. It took court battles to even have a hope of being able to watch the counting of ballots. And remember, this is really important because once you separate the ballot from the envelope in a mail-in ballot, there's nothing you can do, basically. And there was a concerted effort to keep people from being part of that observation process. And I don't think people have a really good handle on why that was, but it was extremely suspicious. to a great number of people, and it definitely happened. I mean, there's video of it happening in Atlanta, and I tell that story in detail, talking to the Republican commissioners in the county where that happened. I talked to the lawyer in Philadelphia who fought the battle to be able to observe the separation of ballots from envelopes in Philadelphia, and Philadelphia shut down their counting rather than allow a team of Republicans to observe the counting of ballots.
So they respond that, well, why has no judge allowed this to be entertained in court?
Well, it's not quite accurate in that there were some legal battles, and in fact, the Philadelphia Republican lawyer won her initial battle to be able to oversee the counting, although courts in Pennsylvania are a mess. But I also tell the story in there of why Trump's legal battle failed in the way it did. And partly that is a result of courts not wanting to get involved in election disputes. But it's also because they took good legal cases, such as one they had about disparate treatment of ballots in different counties based on who ran those counties. You know, in one county, if you were an illegal voter, your vote wasn't counted. But in another county, if you were an illegal voter, meaning you hadn't signed your ballot or dated your ballot, you were counted. Or I should say, if your ballot was illegal. And so they had a case going through the courts that was quite good on that front. And then other parts of the Trump legal team came in and tried to make it about fraud, which, as I already said, is a very difficult thing to conclusively find. And that did not work for them. And they, it's kind of the confusion of a lot of people why they took good cases and turned them into fraud cases when that's not a really good avenue to pursue, particularly in the days and weeks after an election.
I'd like to repeat for my listeners' sake what I regard as the bottom line that any honest person can say. Had there been only Election Day voting, Donald Trump would have won the presidency. Is that accurate?
Well, it is, and one of the interesting things about 2020 is that both parties start to realize that there's a massive partisan divide in openness to mail-in balloting. Republican voters tend to shy away from it unless they're in a state where it's the only way to vote. They don't trust the process when you bring in dozens of other people in between you making your vote and the vote being counted. But Democrats seem to trust the process, and so it becomes a huge partisan issue, and it relates to the Zuckerberg funding, realizing that if they amp up mail-in balloting, that will amp up Democrat votes and marginalize Republican votes. And this is also at issue in some of the legal cases that are brought, the privileging of mail-in ballots. Some states, like Wisconsin, actually say that Election Day voting is a right, mail-in balloting is a privilege, or absentee balloting is a privilege, which I think is actually a good way to distinguish between the two. But yeah, it's not. In Georgia, I think they calculated that 80% of Republicans did not want to use mail-in ballots. It's a huge.
How is it decided whom a state will send ballots to?
That depends on the Secretary of State or other officials or what the law is. Although in many states, the law was not to send mail-in ballots to everyone, but unilaterally, officials would decide to either send ballots or applications for ballots to every single name on the roll, even though, there are millions of.
Well, what does that mean, roll? What roll is the roll? What roll is that?
The voter registration roll. So when you register to vote, your name goes on a roll. When you move to a county next door or a state next door, your name stays on the roll unless they clean it up. States do a horrible job of cleaning up their rolls. And so when you send out a ballot to everybody, that's how you saw those pictures of like one apartment building getting 1,000 ballots, even though those people don't live there anymore.
Do we have I suspect you do, but I don't know this for certain. Do we have a number or an approximate number of the increase in votes for Democrats as a result of all the mail-in ballots?
Well, we know that mail-in balloting went from, 30 million ballots, because there are some states where they only do mail-in ballots. 30 million ballots in 2016 is like over 100 million in 2020. It was a massive increase.
Well, that is a very important number. Go on. I'm just affirming how important that 30 million to 100 million. In 4 years?
And one of the things that's interesting about that is that mail-in balloting usually is attached to all sorts of problems with it.
All right, I want to hear about that, obviously. The book is Rigged, How the Media, Big Tech, and the Democrats Seized Our Elections. Mollie Hemingway, the book is up at my website.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Secretary Chow, I'm glad you're available today because there are two headlines. One from the Wall Street Journal. Biggest U.S. retailers charter private cargo ships to sail around port delays. Then in the New York Times, it's not sustainable. What America's port crisis looks like up close. There aren't enough workers. There aren't enough ships. You've been the Secretary of Labor and the Secretary of Transportation. What do we do?
This is a very dire situation. You know, when COVID initially hit our shores early in 2020, I was in Secretary of Transportation, and we quickly focused on keeping the transportation supply chains open so that essential medical supplies, groceries, and other essentials were available. And that effort actually required some pretty strong measures. Number one, we decided to ease some restrictions on truckers so that they can keep goods moving. We made sure that the national airspace kept airplanes flying because even though at one point planes were nearly empty of passengers, commercial airliners also routinely transport a lot of goods, especially medical supplies. You know, remember those early days of the initial lockdowns? We had hoarding of toilet paper, sandy wipes, shortage of masks. Stores were putting limits on how much customers can buy of one item, and more than 70% of domestic freight moves via trucks. But today's supply chain problems extend all the way, where worker shortages and COVID lockdowns have slowed the loading of cargo ships from where they started to U.S. ports, where, as you've just mentioned, the other day there were over 60 freighters with tens of thousands of storage containers offshore waiting for an opportunity to unload.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America. You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Mollie Hemingway, the book is Rigged. We don't have a lot of time, so I want to get to something we didn't even talk about in your subtitle, The Media, Big Tech, and the Democrats. Talked about the Democrats. In a nutshell, tell me the role of big tech in the 2020 election.
Well, after the 2016 election, tech oligarchs said that they would never let happen again what happened. And what they meant by that was media tried to shut down Trump, so he used social media, and they said that they would do whatever it took to make sure that he wasn't able to communicate directly with the people in an unfiltered fashion. And so they said about everything from deplatforming effective conservative voices, censoring the president and other people, creating algorithmic chaos where if you search for information, it would devalue information from right-leaning sources and elevate those on the left. massive amounts of deplatforming and marginalizing of conservative voices to the tune of, this actually probably had more effect than anything, including propaganda media's malfeasance in the election. But they exerted massive control, and to think that it still came within 43,000 votes in 3 states, even after all they did, it tells you just how much they did, I think.
So I'm putting you on the spot here. The former president, President Trump's continued statement that the election was, quote, stolen. A, is it a word you would use? B, do you think he should use it?
I don't try to give him advice, but no. I love the word rigged, which is why I named the book Rigged. Before votes even happened, everything was designed to orchestrate a particular outcome, whether that was fake news or censorship, tech control of everything, changing election laws, funding of elections. I think sometimes people just get a little bit too much into the semantics, like call it what you want. We just need to know what happened and whether it should be allowed to happen. But I really like the word rigged, which is why I named the book that.
Yes, it makes sense. That's the book, my friends. It is up at DennisPrager.com. The subtitle is How the Media, Big Tech, and the Democrats Seized Our Elections. Mollie Hemingway, what are you working on now?
This is more than enough to get the word out about what I found. But just staying busy at the Federalist, where we every day fight the false media narratives that are put out by corporate media and other propagandists.
Bless your soul for doing so. That's Mollie Hemingway. I read the Federalist every day. I suggest that you do as well. And the book is Rigged. It is a tragedy that Election Day has been destroyed. But then again, as you know, my motto in life, everything the left touches, it destroys. We continue. I'm Dennis Prager.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe! Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking, but
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
It occurs that today, when we're talking, 22 of the 25 ranked colleges in national football by the AP are in red states. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. And in some of those 25 that are in purple states, like Penn State, are in the red part of the purple state. Only Oregon and San Diego State are in blue states. Do you have a theory? I do, as to why college football succeeds in red states far beyond the way it succeeds in blue states today?
Well, I think it represents this. It doesn't, and it's unlike pro football, which has become performance woke art. I think a lot of people in these places incorporate going out to a Saturday football game as in the same sense as 4th of July or standing for the national anthem or singing God Bless America. It's a festive public ritual for red state America, and in a way that pro sports used to be, but now the NBA or the NFL, even Major League Baseball, has forfeited that. It's become a Hollywood-centric or celebrity-centric or New York-centric sport. So I think and actually their popularity is increasing as a result that people innately like sports, but they're shifting from pro sports, I think, to what you talk about.
Well, I also want to add to your assessment. When you think about this, the red states are least amenable to woke college politics.
You're generally correct, because especially the Board of Regents or the overseers, they come from business, they come from all walks of life, and they just don't put up with it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Right. So this has changed in the culture. We now have entire stadiums screaming blank Joe Biden.
Right.
I actually think that in some measure, this is a sign of health in the country.
I don't think you're wrong. In fact, my last column, I talk about in essence, what the American people are feeling in terms of how they're being treated by the current administration.
Now, excuse me, by the way, I'm not saying I approve of it.
Right.
It makes me uncomfortable.
Clearly.
But at the same time,
we're talking about what we're observing.
It seems like a strange sign of health that we feel free enough to say that.
Well, and I don't even know that we necessarily feel free. What I would say is that the American people feel like kind of a battered spouse at this point.
Okay, you wrote an article.
And that the administration is so abusive to how they're treating people that this reaction that you're seeing, and it started out in 2 college football stadiums. It's now been in dozens to hundreds.
It's the new wave.
NFL teams had it going on this week. Talladega or NASCAR or whatever they ran had people chanting it. There is something so inherently abusive about how people are being treated
by the government.
They are, and particularly in a society that wouldn't consider itself particularly Christocentric. And it is, I am actually thankful, to your point, to see a degree of, we're not going to let this abuse continue, even if it's nothing more than using our freedom of speech to say something that's very vulgar and attach it to him. We're not taking it anymore.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
The mayor is backtracking. So it's happening. People have to stand up. These people understand that they have to get reelected. And sometimes we just have to remind them who's in charge. And we, the people, are in charge. That is our system. It is a democratic republic. We all get to participate, but we elect people that we trust. We put them in office, and we trust them to keep us safe. We trust them to abide by the Constitution and to keep us free. And when they do not do that, we have to kick their butts out of office. But the important thing is, as voters, you have to always be mindful of freedom. You have to always be mindful of freedom. Quite frankly, I do believe that it's one of the advantages that I have as a black conservative. You can call me Uncle Tom sellout, whatever. There's no affirmative action plan in heaven. All I have to do is worry about Jesus. I don't have time to worry about you. But I do believe as black conservatives, I compare us to runaway slaves, because I often say our thoughts are consumed with freedom. That's what happens oftentimes with black conservatives, is we find out and we get this piece of information, we get this piece of history, and we're like, what? The federal government or the Democrat Party did what to enslave us? What did they do? And then you just start looking for that. I also believe it's an advantage that people of faith have, whether you're Christian, whether you're Jewish.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
First time in the studio in 2 weeks, not first time broadcasting. Broadcast from home and then broadcast from Florida. But it is the first time in studio in 2 weeks. I had COVID, as you undoubtedly know. As you can hear, I am fine. I attributed my being fine to overwhelmingly having taken for the last year and a half prophylactics, therapeutics that could prevent serious damage, serious illness if one does get COVID, specifically hydroxychloroquine and zinc, and ivermectin, and vitamin D, and vitamin C, and a whole host of other vitamins and prophylactics. The New York Times and others plain out lie to you when they describe ivermectin as a horse dewormer. It is one of the great lies of our time. It is killing people, what the New York Times and others are saying. The New York Times had a gigantic article on ivermectin, and the entire article described it as a horse dewormer. The inventor of it invented it for, or discoverer, whatever term would be used, discovered it for use in humans, not in horses, and received a Nobel Prize in medicine for it. But that was not reported once in the large article in the New York Times. That the New York Times lies on behalf of what the left believes is as obvious as Pravda lying on behalf of the Communist Party in the Soviet Union. Same with the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, and the like. So I believe that I am a living example of the benefits of these prophylactics and of these therapeutics. That they were not almost universally used is a condemnation of the American medical profession, the likes of which there is no precedent for. Dr. Harvey Risch of, I believe it is Yale Medical School, an epidemiologist, said that hundreds of thousands of Americans were killed by the American medical profession by not advocating the use of these therapeutics. It is a scandal. And the fact that I said that I wanted to be able to have natural immunity was the subject of a major piece in the Washington Post. Somehow finds my comments on COVID worthy of an entire article. And that was that was where you can read, and you can still see it, all the comments by Washington Post readers wishing that I die. It's a fascinating thing. The fact that I believe that therapeutics are better than a vaccine, I've never said the vaccine doesn't work. I never said it once. I never even implied it. What I did say is that therapeutics are a safer way to deal with COVID than the vaccine for many people. For many people, the vaccine has undoubtedly been beneficial. Whether it will be beneficial in the long term is a question. The biggest question is, do you give it to 5-year-olds and 12-year-olds and 15-year-olds and 20-year-olds? There, I am absolutely opposed to experimenting with young people with the vaccine. They have absolutely no need for it. They are healthy. If they get it, it is in the vast majority of cases inconsequential. Why are parents giving their children vaccines? They think that they are just another form of measles vaccine, but they're wrong. This is a brand new type of vaccine, and it has not been given the years of experimentation that normally would be given something this new. Why you would give your child over to an experiment when you love your child can only be explained by the fact that you have been effectively brainwashed by the left-wing media that you trust. Why you trust them is its own riddle, that I will not engage in at this time in the pursuit of an answer to. So that is my story. I am now the possessor of natural immunity, the best type of immunity you can have. Why people like me are banned from areas that mandate vaccination is an astonishing thing. The whole thing is astonishing. People who are vaccinated feel safe only among the vaccinated. This was a statement made by the New Zealand Prime Minister, a true dictator. The woman is, for all intents and purposes, a nut. Yeah, let's play not the latest one, Sean. Let's play my favorite one, that if the government doesn't say it, it isn't true. She actually said this. This is the New Zealand Prime Minister, and it is one of the great comments of the modern age. Otherwise, hold on, that's number one of her comments. Otherwise, dismiss everything else. If the government doesn't say it to you, dismiss it. This is classic leftism. All truth emanates from us. That's why Lenin named the Soviet communist newspaper Truth, Pravda. He said it. Truth is what the Communist Party says it is. In New Zealand, truth is what the government says it is. In the United States, truth is what the Democrats say it is, what the New York Times says it is. There is no other truth. All dissent is a lie. No science ever was advanced with this attitude toward dissent. Continue with our beloved Prime Minister of New Zealand. Okay, that's number 2. We will continue to be your single source of truth. Is that beautiful? Your single source of truth.
We will continue to be your single source of truth.
You know, when religious people say that the Bible is their single source of truth, they're laughed at. Just laughed at. By the way, nobody, including me, the author of a Bible commentary and believer in the Bible, I don't say it's my single source of truth. It's my source of values. That's true. It's not my single source. I have Shakespeare. I have Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. So we don't even have, we religious people do not have the totalitarian views of the secular left. Is there anything left in her great statement?
Source of truth. We will provide information frequently. We will share everything we can, everything else you see, a grain of salt. And when you see those messages, remember that unless you hear it from us, it is not the truth.
There you go. And now is number 3. Unless you hear it from us, it is not the truth. It's mind-blowing, is it not? Think about it. It is mind-blowing. The staggering hubris, the monumental arrogance of it all. If you don't hear it from us, it is not the truth. Okay. That's that. And by the way, that's what your kids believe at college. If you don't hear it at college, it isn't the truth. Your parents are idiots. Your teachers, they know all truth. Anything else, like a PragerU video, shall not be shown. There is only one source of truth, your left-wing teacher. And they buy it. And they buy it, and they're proud of it. My left-wing teacher told me that America is systemically racist, therefore it is, even though that is the greatest lie since Jews used Christian children's blood to bake matzahs. The medieval blood libel. As I have said often, this is the second biggest national lie. that America is systemically racist. You will believe it, and people do, and they're proud of believing it. It's fun to be unquestioning.
The Dennis Prager Show, live from the Relief Factor Pain-Free.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor. We would have sandwiches with no meat. My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America. You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
SalemNow.com, where we teach what isn't taught. That's what we do. But of course, anywhere the left is in charge, whether it's New Zealand or your local school, all truth comes from the left. All dissent is false. Half of the kids who go to college believe that. Yep. Dissent is patriotic. Remember that line? That was when the left wasn't in power. As soon as they're in power, dissent is evil. I began the show today. I won't review it all at all. Won't review it at all. I won't review it all at all. There you go. Somebody has to go to prison for the killing of this woman on the Alec Baldwin set. Somebody must go to prison, or this country has announced it doesn't give a damn about homicide. Okay? It's a real test of the value of human life. What the consequence will be. Somebody, at least one person, must go to prison. Or it's a statement of we don't give a damn about innocent human life. Which might be true in any event, in many instances. But this would be a glaring example of such. Woman is killed. Something really, really bad took place. To put a live bullet into a gun to be aimed at a human being. Right? Is that fair to say? Ticks me off. Yeah, it was aimed at the camera and they were behind the camera. Exactly. That is the precise fact, and that's the way we should relate it. Correct. So I have a thought. Normally I don't. I have a thought on the World Series. That's right. You didn't expect it, did you? So who do I root for? My general approach to sports is to ignore them, since the NBA and NFL in particular, and Major League Baseball to a large extent, caved into America hatred, to lying. They lie for a living. The NBA is particularly despicable because you cannot say a word against China in the NBA. The Chinese suppression, and complete suppression at that, of Hong Kong, you can't mention it if you are an NBA player, general manager, coach, because of the billions of dollars that come into the NBA from China. But they can have the hate organization, the, what is it again? Black Lives Matter, right, which is a hate organization. It's a lying, deceitful, hate-filled organization. Everybody outside of the left knows that, but very few people will say it because courage is a very rare commodity and the left lies for a living. That's all the left does is lie. That's why they lie about that group. Bunch of Marxist, America-hating liars. But they're celebrated at the NBA, whereas Chinese Democrats, small d, are held in contempt. One Boston Celtic just commented about Tibet, and the guy is pretty much, his career is pretty much doomed in the NBA. So how do I root for teams in light of my contempt for the NBA and the NFL? And partially Major League Baseball. Not even partially. So I generally root against teams. If the team represents a particularly despicable city, like the Los Angeles Dodgers, I live in Los Angeles, I rooted against the Dodgers because it represents a sick city called Los Angeles, run by a sick man named Eric Garcetti, and with a sick district attorney, Gascon, and the like. I live in a very sick place called California and a sick city called Los Angeles. It is only second to San Francisco in its pathology. So I rooted against the Dodgers, having nothing against the Dodgers individually, but not wanting Los Angeles to have reason for celebration, given how despicable the city has become. So you will say, why do I continue to live here? There is one reason and one only. There are so many people here I love. That's the reason. I am a people person. It's not easy for me to leave people with whom I have had relations for decades. That's it. That's why I stay here. It is a scummy place, California. It is corrupt as pretty much as corrupt as Venezuela, and it is run by indecent human beings who don't give a damn about murder, given the way they treat murderers and not to mention thieves in the laws of this state. So who do I root for? So I rooted for the Atlanta Braves against my own home team, the Los Angeles Dodgers. And now the question is, whom do I root for between Houston, since I love Texas, and Atlanta and the Atlanta Braves? So it's a somewhat of a dilemma, except it's not fair because I'm very close to one of the highest ranking men of the Braves organization, and I won't burden him by saying who he is. I'll ask him if it's okay if I say, but in the meantime, that is a factor. But there is another factor. Atlanta was robbed of the All-Star game. The despicable Major League Baseball league, the MLB, took away the income of vast numbers of people in Georgia on purely left-wing political grounds. And I want Atlanta compensated. I want them to celebrate what Major League Baseball cannot take away from them, and that is a World Series victory. Otherwise, I would be happy to root for a Texas team, since Texas is one of the last hopes of this country. But Houston cheated, that is correct. But the cheated is a past tense. So what can I do? For how long do I hold it against them? Did they cheat this year? That's the question. 1-8-PRAGER-776. I'm Dennis Prager.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dream cut short forever.
We're so worried
Pure
about
thought.
other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor. We would have sandwiches with no meat. My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This is why we're fighting for the soul of America. You should be able to share ideas without fear of being fired from your job or shouted down.
You are not to be heard. This is one of the few things we have no precedent for in the United States.
You have the right to remain silent.
Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. A prominent conservative is on the line. Jim DeMint, former senator of the great state, and it is a great state, of South Carolina. It's very rare, by the way, he's chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute. It's very rare that I have anybody who's written a work of fiction. But he is special, and the book is fascinating. The book is really a theological novel, and it is titled Satan's Dare. Jim DeMint, I did not know you're a theologian.
Well, actually, that's why I enjoy listening to you. You're one of the few people in media who actually can talk about the relationship between Judeo-Christian ideas, biblical truth, and what's going on in our culture and politics. And so I've researched this book for over 10 years. It's the most important thing I've ever done. It is a novel, but folks like Josh McDowell say it has more truth in it than a lot of nonfiction he's written. But Dennis, I do appreciate the opportunity to talk about it because I do care about our country, and I know it's in decline because the church and the whole Judeo-Christian church in America is in decline, and that's pretty much because people of faith no longer defend the truth of the Bible. And so this book is really about the characters who go through a lot of tragedy, but they are asking difficult questions and seeking the answers. And this is something I think Christians and Jews have to do if they're going to have a strong faith.
God, I couldn't agree with you more. I have, really all of my life, I have said that since World War II, it's a long time ago, Americans did not teach their children what it meant to be American. Christians did not teach their kids what it meant to be Christian, and Jews did not teach their kids what it meant to be Jewish. And you're echoing this sentiment, and that is more than just the secular onslaught. The reason for the decline in religion. People have forgotten how to make the case for what you and I revere, the Bible. That's why I think what you've written is important, whether anybody agrees with every single thing. Nobody agrees with everybody's theology. It doesn't exist. But
I'm sure there are a lot of traditional Christian theologians who will take exception for a lot of the theories, but that's part of what we have to do is see where biblical truth and credible scientific truth can be aligned. And so we look at different interpretations of the traditional text, but make the case that the Bible is true and God did create this earth and he gave us the Bible to tell him about himself. But so much of what's happening in the culture has just become mind-blowing to anyone who believes in any absolute truth. So, I mean, we know from Proverbs, we know from the New Testament that you don't know the truth until that all begins with the knowledge of God. And while it does not sound connected to politics, when I look at what's going on today in Washington and around the country, it is truly, in some cases, evil, and I would not have said that just a few years ago because it's such a strong word. But God tells us a lot about what will happen if we forget the blessings that he gave us. And then it's the title of this book, Satan's Dare, came from the first chapter of Job, where Job dares God to remove Job's blessing, saying that if you do that, he'll curse you. And one of the theories in the book is that Job represents all of us because we all go through suffering and tragedy, and we have a lot of questions about why God allows that to happen. But Satan's Dare really digs into a lot of that. You have two preachers in this book who go through tragedy. One becomes the world's most famous atheist. The other struggles with God but clings to his faith, and they end up in a debate. And I think most people will find it very very exciting.
You know, when you mention struggle with God, I have found to my amazement, because a lot of Christians really know their Bible, and yet when I speak before Christian audiences, which I do regularly, it comes to most Christians as news that the word Israel, God's chosen people, the word Israel means struggle with God. And that's not my interpretation. It says that in the Bible itself. Struggle with God is Israel.
Yeah, well, Jacob became Israel.
Right,
Jacob
you got it.
Struggle with God. And but for me, the writing and digging into the Bible, I was like a lot of Christians you talk about. I mean, I read the Bible and I believed, but until you really start digging in and asking questions of how could a sovereign God allow evil in the world, and why we go through this physical world that always ends badly from a physical standpoint. And for me, even though I don't have definitive answers on everything that I ask, it was just very confirming to my faith to ask the question.
Yes, you did. And stay on with me, because you ask the big questions. And for that alone, I admire you. The book is Satan's Dare by Jim DeMint. And ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384. Try it for 3 weeks. You'll know in 3 weeks if it works. How do you like that for a deal? They don't lead you on. You'll know in 3 weeks. If it works, it's the biggest bargain. If it doesn't work, you threw out $19.95. So what? That's ReliefFactor.com for joint pain and muscle pain. ReliefFactor.com, 800-500-8384.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Bank transactions. The Democrats want the IRS to snoop around and check out what you're doing if you have a bank account with more than $600 in it. They want to get involved in your PayPal transactions. You're sending money to your kids. The IRS wants to know all about that. They think they can drag more money out of us. Like the IRS. And the Democrats' scheme is we got to figure a way to pay for all this crap. All this spending the Democrats want. Okay, here's where we can do it. Let's go audit a bunch of people and let's go check out grandma sending $601 to their grandkid via PayPal. And when a reporter pointed out to Pelosi that Americans are livid about this, and is it going to stay in your reconciliation bill? Pelosi had a very predictable answer.
Yes, there are concerns that some people have, but if people are breaking the law and not paying their taxes, one way to track them is through the banking measure. I think 600, but that's a negotiation that will go on as to what the amount is. But yes.
Yes. You think a multi-millionaire like Nancy Pelosi cares about a hardworking person being tracked by the IRS? If you have a transaction over $600, yes, some people are calling the bank. You better call your bank. You got a relationship with a local banker? You better call him or her, and you better demand there be a pushback.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
I grew up poor, which is even worse than being poor. We would have sandwiches with no meat. My American dream entailed working hard and making $20,000 a year. But I surpassed that goal and became a corporate CEO.
We'll all be able to say, free at last, free at last.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
And this is the truth. The average family, over $800 a year, without having to sacrifice phone coverage. It's the same as Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, except it's extremely inexpensive. $30 a month for unlimited text, unlimited talk, 6 gigabytes of data. I didn't fully believe this, so I actually got a phone through them. So I have 2 phones now. You can also get a phone at a great discount, by the way. New iPhone or Android. This is with Pure Talk. All you do is dial pound 250, say Dennis Prager. You'll also save 50% off your first month. It works. Pound 250 and say Dennis Prager. It's not often that a prominent politician writes a work of theology, in this case in novel form. Jim DeMint, chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute, former U.S. Senator, South Carolina, has done this. You say it took you 10 years to write?
Yes, it did. I started as a nonfiction, and after a few years, my publisher, who you know, Gary Terashito, who edited some, I think, a book about Exodus for you, but he just told me it was too much in the weeds and too deep, and I needed to weave a story around it so people could relate to the characters and the circumstances that they go through. And it turned out to be a lot of fun. And as you know, writing, sometimes the characters become your best friends. And they surely did. And so a lot of my life and the people that I've seen around me in my life, there's a lot real that's in here, but I just wrote it into stories so that it would be easier for people to think about the different aspects of theology.
What you and I share is the conviction that at bottom, the great problem facing the United States is theological?
Yes, it is, and I don't think many people know it. I don't think many Christians and Jews know it. And one of the theories in the book that's, I think, evidenced throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament is that God works through his people, that a lot of his power in this physical world, he funnels through his people and affects delegates. And when things don't get done, we have to wonder if maybe God's people are not praying enough or not doing enough. And that becomes evident once you start thinking about it. That in Christianity, we call ourselves the body of Christ, which is in a sense the body of God. But you see the children of God in the Old Testament. God doesn't go get the Amalekites; He sends His people, and when they go, He fights for them. So there's a dynamic going on there that I think we have to realize, and that America, we have to look at it as we are stewards of America. And those who say, I'm not going to get involved with politics because it's too dirty, don't realize that it's our job because it was given to us.
The people who say that are as guilty for America's decline as the left is. There is no distinction between the left and the people who won't fight them.
You're right. It's become a cliche, but freedom and our way of life is not free. Every generation has to stand up.
That's exactly right.
And there's probably been no more ever a time when there's more intimidation.
That's right.
For standing up.
That's right.
But that's why we need folks like you, and I know you embolden thousands, if not millions, just by telling the truth. And it's been one good thing about COVID, Dennis, is I've been home and I could listen to you on the radio.
I never thought of that as a bonus of COVID, but I'll take it.
I spent my early life in sales with all your cassettes in my car.
So I'm very touched.
It's fun to get back on your show and talk about faith, but it's not abstract, because really, as you and I have talked about, and you talk about all the time, the country depends on people of faith standing up and defending a real truth.
Yes, otherwise, what is your faith? The book, my friends, is Satan's Dare. It's a novel, but it's a theological work. And he's a serious thinker, Jim DeMint. Satan's Dare. It is up at DennisPrager.com. Jim, I wish you only success with the book.
Well, thank you, Dennis. Thanks for what you do every day. Look forward to getting back on your show sometime.
That's a deal. You got it. Thank you, sir. Yes, he understands the issue in the United States. Let me give you so many examples. I'll give you one. Here's one that you would find in my commentary in Genesis, the Rational Bible, Genesis. What does God do for 6 days? And I forget whether it's 6 days literally or not. I find that question to be inconsequential. And what does God do for that period of time? Whether it's 6 billion years or it's 6 days, I don't care. What does God do? Mostly makes order out of chaos. And what the left is doing is undoing that order and making chaos. That human sexuality is not binary is a perfect example of a statement of chaos from the left. We're not born male or female. Okay? So for those of you who want to know where does the left and the Bible differ, well, in every conceivable arena of life. But here's a perfect example. God created Adam, male and female, he created them. That's what matters. That's the only distinction that matters. Male and female. And the left is undoing that. It's not binary. Really? Is it binary in all other animals in the world? Of course it is. Are kangaroos not born male and female? Or birds? They're all male or female, except humans. But I thought we were just another animal.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing? Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border. Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Man, I miss my father, and I want him to be here with me, but he's not.
We all had something in common. A lot of us were miserable. We had no fathers in our lives.
This is how I began the life of crime. I desired to have a father who would tell me that what I did was wrong.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Hey everybody, Dennis Prager here. I was just handed this by Will, who is the associate to the associate of the associate at the Association of Associates here. Will's in charge of the video. So anyway, USA Today is really ticked at the Atlanta Braves. Atlanta Braves make unfortunate anti-vaccine statement with Travis Tritt as NLCS national anthem singer. I don't know what he said that's anti-vaccine. He is against discriminating against people who, yes, he wasn't going to perform in any venue that was going to discriminate against people who do not have the vaccine. That doesn't make him anti-vaccine. It makes him pro-science. Because, folks, if you're vaccinated, what the hell do you care whether the next guy is? Nobody has ever answered that. No one. And what about the millions who had COVID, like me, and who have something better, better, B-E-T-T-E-R, than a vaccine? natural immunity. We have to get vaccinated too? And we have to wear masks too? And you're telling me that's science? Well, at USA Today, that's what science goes for. USA Today is another left-wing rag sheet. But it's good to know that the Braves chose this guy to sing the national anthem. That and the MLB stealing the All-Star game from Atlanta give you more reasons to, if you're not from Houston, and if you are from Houston, I totally get it. And normally I would be rooting for a Texas team, but I explained earlier my anger at the Major League Baseball for robbing Atlanta of the All-Star game. And I don't know if any other teams in the Major League Baseball protested against that. We fight here on the show. Everywhere I go, lecture constantly around the country. People tell me that I give them strength. That is great. I'm happy to hear that. I want to. Because the only question is not whether you are optimistic or pessimistic. The only question is, will you fight? That's it. The left is destroying this country, the best country ever created. They are a demonic force. And you know it. There's no other explanation for why people who have grown up with liberty hate liberty. There is no explanation that is rational, except the demonic. And I don't mean that literally, but figuratively, I don't know of any other explanation. To loathe something that is beautiful makes you loathsome. Simple as that. Folks, you want to help the country? Click on the banner for the Alliance Defending Freedom at DennisPrager.com. I'll see you tomorrow.